Hey guys, today we are going to be building a login and registration API for a Laravel project. So we'll be using Laravel Sanctum. So according to the official documentation, Laravel Sanctum provides a featherweight authentication system for SPAs, mobile applications, and simple token-based API. So if you are building an API, you have to authenticate some endpoint. Like some endpoints are protected. For example, maybe the user profile. Okay, you want to get the profile of the logged in user, so that means you have to build an API. You have to build an API that handles the login or the registration. Once the user has logged in, a token will be generated. So that token will be used when accessing those protected endpoints. Okay, so to get started, we're going to create a new Laravel project. Okay, so Laravel new Laravel API, that's the name of the project. Okay, so we are going to open that project in our Visual Studio Code or your any text editor you are using. Okay, so mine is Visual Studio Code. Okay, so let's open the integrated terminal. So we are going to start the server, PHP artisan serve. So okay, so it's running on port 8000. Okay, so the first thing we are going to do, so let's open another tab. The first thing we are going to do is create a controller that handles the endpoints. All right, so PHP artisan make controller, call it API controller without any space. Okay, so API controller. So you can see, you should be able to see the controller here. Nice. So let's start with the first one, login. Or we should start with registration. Let's start with login. Okay, so create the login function. Login. All right, so it's going to accept request. Okay, so so the first thing we're going to do is validate the input. If you are logging in, you have to supply some inputs, right? So we validate them. Validator is equal to validator make. So supply the request or the request, and supply the email. Okay. Check for the email. So the email is required and it must be email. All right, so it has to verify if the email supply is an actual email. So, and then password. So is also required, and it's a string, then minimum of 6. All right, so that is that. Now we notice there is an error in the validator. We've not import the validator. All right, so illuminate support /package/validator. Okay, so and there is an error here. Please try to, this should be this, not colon. Okay, so please pay attention to that. And okay, so now we have to check if everything is okay. So validator from our validator variable, so check for fails. If it fails, then it's going to run this block. So it's going to return response JSON. Okay, so message, it's going to be validator error first. So what I did here is that I'm trying to get the first error, all right, so that it can show the error once, so I don't have to list all the error at once. All right, so you can do it as you want, all right, but I prefer to choose the first one first. If there is an error, I want to see the first one before we move on. All right, so, and the status code should be 401. Okay, so now let's continue with the login. So credentials is equal to request. We get from the request, we are going to get the email and the password. So now let's try to log in. So if not attempt, we're trying to log in, so attempt, supply the credentials. Okay, so this part is going to do what? It's going to attempt the login. So if the login doesn't work, it's going to return something. It's going to return an error. So let's copy this error message. So so it's going to return response. Now the message will be what? Unauthorized. Check your login credentials. Okay, so now if that is all good, now that means we've successfully logged in. So we can actually get the user from there, the user profile. So that will be inside the request. Okay, so token result, you want to get the token now. So from the user, you can now create a new token. Create token. So you can just write anything you want there, but let's just write, say, personal token, personal access token. Okay. So this string will be used in encrypting the token. Okay, so you can use anything you want, any message you want to encrypt it. Okay, so from the token result, you can now get the plain text. Oh, sorry. You can get the plain text token. Okay, so let's try to send the response. Okay, return response should be JSON and token, supply the token, and so, and the user, you want to see the user profile too. So in case you are using for a mobile app, you can see all this, you can see the token and the user profile, so that you can actually store those information in the local database, maybe on the mobile app or the front end. Okay, so user, and yeah, that is that for the login. Now let's do for the registration. Register, we call it register, call it function register, and it's going to accept requests and actually get the request from there. So we also have the validator just like the login, so let's copy this to save our time. Validator, Okay, so request all. So we are going to need the email, the name. We are creating a new account, right? So the user has to supply their name, and it's going to be string. The length will be between 2 and 100. Okay, so the minimum length will be 2 and the maximum length will be 100. So if it's less than 2 or more than 100, it will throw an error, right? So that's what we did there. And the email is going to be string 2. String is going to be email, right? And the maximum will be 100, and it must be unique. The email must be unique. Okay, so unique. Oh, keep making a mistake with this thing. Should be this, please. So it must be unique from where? From the user table. So if you are saying we want it to be unique, you have to specify the table. So it should be unique. If you check the user table, that email must not already exist in that table. Okay, so now the next one, last one is password. So password should be required also. Then string, then you should be able to confirm password. All right, so once you are sending the request from maybe your mobile app, you have to supply the name, the email, the password, and password confirmation. Okay, so that is what this is going to do. It's going to check for password confirmation. Okay, so to check if the password actually match, right? So, and then minimum is what? 6. Now we are going to check if the validator fails. So exactly like this one. So let's just copy it. So it's going to return a response if there is any error, and reply with what? Response with is the first error. So that is what this does. If you want it to respond with all the errors, you can just use all the errors, but I just want the first. I want to see the first error. So maybe on a mobile app, the developer can just drop the first error, and in the error message maybe an alert or something like that. So okay, so we're going to get the user. We are going to store the user. Okay, so we are trying to store it. We are trying to create a new profile, so we have to store the user. So user create. Now there's something tricky about this create function. Okay, or method. If you want to use this create method, you have to specify in your model. So please, I want you to pay attention to this. In your model, you have to add all the fillables. Maybe in your own scenario, you need the user address, all right, while you are storing the information. Okay, so you have to add the address here. Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V. You have to add the address here, or else the address won't be stored in the database. That if you are using this create method. Okay, you understand? So that's what we are using. So I'm just saying that now in case yours is not storing database, you have to add that. If you're adding extra column, you have to add the extra column here. That is if you are using this create method. So now continue. Array match. The reason why we are doing this is we want to update the password. Yeah, we want to encrypt the password. The password will be the password from the front end will be like a plain text. We want to encrypt it before we store it into the database. Okay, so the first thing we supply is what? The validated input, and then the password. We want the password too. So this just kind of like update the value of the password. All right, the password is already in the input, the validated input, but we want to update the value by encrypting it. So be quit. So the request password. Nice. Okay, so that should create the information we need. Right, so Now we got an error here, so we have to import the user model. So from where? Use, let me put some space here. Use app models user. Perfect, the error is gone. So like the like the login account, the login part, we have to create a token so that once the user has created an account, the user can automatically generate a token because the user has logged in. All right, so and so let's just copy this. All right, you know what, let's copy all this and come down here. So since we already have the user, we don't have to create a new user again. So now user is got, what did I copy? Sorry, I'm copying all this and pasting it here. Okay, yeah. So we already have the user from the one we get from the create user. From that, we are going to create a token. So the token result, we create a plain text token from the token result. There are some properties from this result like expiry date and all that, but we want the plain text token so that we can send that to the front end. All right, so that is going to, after that we are going to give a response to supply the user and the token, but we want the message to message user successfully registered. Okay, so that is that. Now let's go. I want us to test this. I want us to test this first, the login and registration. So let's go to route. We have to define the endpoint in the route. So the API route. So let's leave the default one, just leave it like that. So route, can come down there, and so this will be post. We start with the login. So that will be API controller. You see, my test editor automatically imports the API controller. So if yours doesn't do that, you have to import it manually with this line of code. Okay, so class, comma, and then we specify the method, the function, whatever. Okay, so nice. And we want for registration too, so that will be register. Okay, so let's go to our postman to test the endpoint. So what's the route? What's the this is a server, and so that's the localhost /API/login, or let's start with /register. Okay, so okay, so there are some things I haven't mentioned. We have to connect with the database, of course. So now the default database name is Laravel API login registration. Okay, so I've created that in I'm using PHP MySQL. Okay, so I've created a database with that name. All right, if you haven't done that, you have to do that first. Create the database, and so once you've done that, you are all good on that end. But I need the username and password. My default is root and root, so that is saved. So restarting the server is restarted, but now we want to migrate the database. So migration, so we're all good with this. We don't have to add anything, so let's just migrate like that. PHP artisan migrate. So I've migrated. Okay, so we can see the tables. Okay, so we have the user table, so that is empty. So let's start with the user endpoint /API/register. So that is post. The post should be post. Now the name field is required, so our validator is working. Okay, so Let's go to form data so that we can supply the information we need. We need the name, Jane dot do. Nope, Jane do. Okay, so we need the email, jane.do@gmail.com. Then we need the password. You notice that when we are registering, we we ask for 3 inputs: the name, email, and password. So the password is what? Password. Now the next thing, the last thing you need is password confirmation. That is very important so that we can confirm the password. So whatever you are sending the information from, confirmation confirmation. Okay, so whatever you are sending the data from, it should include this password confirmation. Okay, so you have to confirm the password. Let's say maybe you supply the password but the password is not the same, so let's send that. So password confirmation does not match, so it has to match. Nice. User successfully registered. Then we have a token. Then we have the user profile. That's just perfect. Okay, so we have the token. We can use our token to do anything we want. For example, we want to see the user profile. All right, so the profile. So that means we have to use a middleware. That's like kind of trying to secure an endpoint. We want to secure the endpoint. We want to, so that only authenticated user can have access to that endpoint. So we have to make use of what? The middleware. So it can kind of be like verify first, authenticate the user first before proceeding. So we are going to make use of route group, and we are going to need middleware. First thing is middleware. So which middleware are we using? That would be Sanctum. Okay, so that's that, and we have the function like that. Nice. So and now let's have our profile endpoint inside it. So the profile is get. We want to get the user profile. Nice. So the profile should be available here. So let's copy this. It should be get and API/profile. Okay. Login not defined. So there's one thing I want you to notice here. You see that the response is like some kind of HTML thing, like HTML response, like it's trying to redirect to the login page. So we don't want that on our endpoint. So once you are trying to make a request from your front end, you have to supply this, the accept application. It should be JSON. So the format of the header that is being accepted should be what? In form of JSON. Okay, so the Sanctum will automatically detect that and give us response in form of what? JSON. Very nice. So what we notice there now that we are trying to access the profile, but it's saying unauthenticated. Okay, so it's saying unauthenticated. So let's try to so that means we have to supply the authorization header. Authorization header, and that way, so we have the token. We have the token here. You can actually use that authorization header to authenticate. Okay, so Bearer, start with prefix it with bearer and space, then the token like that. Profile does not exist. So you see the response in the form of JSON. So we have the message profile does not exist. So we created the endpoint, the route, but we didn't create the function. Okay, so let's create the function here. From profile, like we mentioned in the route profile. So that is not going to accept anything. So we just, the only thing it's going to do is to what? Return response form of JSON, and as we return the user profile. So that's how to get the user profile, like that. So very nice, very nice, very nice. So let's work on login. Wait, let's work on logout. Okay, so let's work on logout. We want to be able to, log out once the user, the endpoint, you can actually log out from your front end. So you make the request to log out. So that before you can log out, that means you've already logged in, right? So that will be inside the middleware. So logout, the endpoint will be logout, and the function will be what? Logout. So let's create a logout function in the API controller again. So logout. So the tricky part of this logout, we are using Sanctum. So Sanctum is creating a token for us. So if you want to log out, that means you have to delete that token or invalidate some kind of invalidate the token. Or so you want to, before you access that endpoint, you are using a token to access it. So to log out that user, you have to target that token that was used to access that endpoint, then log it out or delete that token. So that's exactly what we want to do. So to get that, we get that from the request. Okay, so so from the request, we have the user, and we get the current access token. All right, so the current access, the token that was used to access the endpoint, we want it. So this token that was used to access that endpoint, we want to delete it. All right, so that's how we log out. Okay, so delete. Nice, that's it. And let's just return a response. Return response JSON message. So the message should be user successfully logged out. So to that, so I have a semicolon here. Okay, so let's make that logout request. So that logout should be post. Okay, so change it to post. So if you are testing, when we are testing on our post manual from your front end, so call the logout endpoint and call post. So make the request. Nice. It's trying to say what? It's trying to redirect us. So we need that accept header again. So the accept should be what? So remember to do this once you are making that request from your front end. So you need to add this to it. So what's the format of data that is being accepted? Okay, so unauthorized. So that means we need the authorization header. Yeah, because before you can log out, you have to log in, right? So you have to verify that you've already logged in. So that authorization header, okay, from the token that we have here, we generated when we created the account. Okay, so space and token, user successfully logged out. So if you use that token to access the user profile again, you see the token has been deleted. So let's try to log in. The login endpoint. Login. So the login is going to do what? It's going to be post, as we remember, and it's going to accept to input the email and the password. So you remember the password, the email, jane.do@gmail.com, and the password is what? Let's use password and add the number to it. A wrong password, right? Unauthorized. check your login credentials. So let's use the correct password. Very nice. You can see the user profile and the token. You can use that token to do what? To access the user profile. Okay, so token, you see, all good. And you can also do what? Log out again. So the user has been logged out. If you try to access it again, it's gone. Okay, so another thing I want to talk about here is the there are some way once you are developing for, maybe you want it to be in kind of, the API should be in kind of versions, like the profile, like the login, this login endpoint should be what, like version 2/login. Okay, so you can just do what, you can just add prefix to it. This kind of like a very long code, but I don't want to waste time typing it, so let's just, so I just copy this block of code. Okay, so it should be prefix and version 2. So that should kind of like, or what is the version? Okay, version 2. Let's see, that's version, we are starting for version 2. Okay, so we just copy everything here into this block. I hope you understand. So anytime you are trying to access the endpoint, you need that version 2. You need to include it there. For example, if I don't include, the endpoint won't be available. You see, not found. Okay, so if I add the version 2 to it, version 2, so I kind of like prefix it. So another thing is, I mentioned about middleware. What if I didn't protect? This is one of the way we can protect the endpoint, all right, using the middleware. But there's another way. If you want to protect the whole controller, okay, you can just, let's say we didn't protect them, we've checked out the block that protects those endpoints. It's just like they are empty there, there's nothing protecting them. Okay, but in your controller you can actually protect the whole controller. If you notice, you have to do that. So you can use this method using the constructor, the controller constructor. Okay, so public function constructor, construct. So this middleware, so for all the constructor, the middleware should be what? Sanctum. Remember, we are using Sanctum as the middleware. Okay, so the Sanctum is generating those tokens for us, except, so we can specify the endpoint you don't want to protect. All right, so we don't want to protect of course we don't want to protect the login and registration endpoint. So you can specify as much as you want here, except, so we have the login, the registration, so the register endpoint. Okay, so that should do the trick. So that is kind of like protecting all the functions in this controller except the login and register function. Okay, so that should work. Okay, so version 2. So we've generated a new token. So let's go to the profile. The profile is supposed to be protected. All right, so the profile not found. So because we've prefixed it with version 2. So version 2. So let's apply the token that we just generated now. Sorry. Token. Okay. Very nice. So okay, so I think that is all about that. So if you have any question, please drop it in the comments. So please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.